Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. I love the Indiana Jones movies. My favorite Indiana Jones movie is the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I can still see that scene where Indy is being lowered down into this vault underground. Indy, who's afraid of snakes, not afraid of much else, but afraid of snakes, looks down and sees a room full of snakes. And his comment is, snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Indy might have made that same comment if he'd have been along on the trip in Numbers chapter 21. Beginning of verse 4, from Mount Hor they set out by way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, and the people became impatient on the way. Can you see this coming again? And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food. The worthless food being the manna that they've been eating for 40 years now. God's punishment this time, why did it have to be snakes? And that's what it was. Yahweh sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people so that many people of Israel died. And the people then confessed their sin. They come to Moses and say, we've sinned against God. What are we going to do? So Moses, ever the intercessor, the mediator, goes to God. And in verse 8, Yahweh said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten when he sees it shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent, he put it up on a pole, and as the people lifted their eyes to that serpent on a pole, they were healed from the venomous snakes. You know that story. There's not much there that you didn't know from Sunday school if you went to Sunday school. But maybe what you don't know is what happened to that pole and what the symbolism of that pole involved. First of all, the symbolism is pretty easy to see. That serpent on a pole is a type of Christ. And even Jesus will highlight that in John chapter 3, verse 14. He says, as Moses raised the serpent on the pole, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And he's looking at that day when he'll be lifted on a cross. There's an irony there, and it comes through John's gospel pretty clearly, that Jesus' finest hour, that his hour of glory, John calls it, takes place on a cross. That's when God lifts him up before the world. That's when God pays for the sins of all mankind in the person of Jesus Christ. That's his finest hour. There's another dimension to that snake on a pole. 2 Kings 18, verse 4. King Hezekiah is cleaning up the temple, and in cleaning up the temple, he comes across something interesting. He removed the high places and broke the pillars and cut down the Asherah, and he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until those days, the people of Israel had burned incense to it. It was called Nehushtan. For 700 years, these people hung on to that bronze serpent. And instead of that bronze serpent on a stick being a reminder of God's deliverance and God's grace and God's mercy in the face of their rebellion, that bronze serpent became an idol to them. They named it Nehushtan, and they worshipped it. They were depraved. And yet, God loved them, and yet, God hung in there with them, and 700 years later, he's providing a king by the name of Hezekiah who will clean up the mess that previous kings had left and draw those people back to the worship of Yahweh. Part of that mess, that bronze serpent from 700 years before.